A trip to Arlington on the line for Texas and Iowa State with 2 games left in the regular season. Chip Brown and Alec Busse here to break down this game. The Longhorns snapped a 3-game losing skid to the Cyclones last season with a close 24-21 win. They now enter this matchup as a 7.5-point favorite. Now, the Big 12 title race, guys, has been so fun to watch all year long. Texas leads the way in the conference standings, but Iowa State is one of 4 teams with a 5-2 conference record. So, Alec, how important is this game for the Cyclones' chances of making their first title game since 2020?
Yeah, it's really important for Iowa State. If they want to make it to the Big 12 title game, I think they probably need to do everything they can to win these last 2 games against Texas this weekend and then on the road at K-State. I don't have the schedules memorized of everyone the rest of the year, but I have to imagine that that's probably the toughest 2-game slate that you're going to get in the last 2 weeks amongst Big 12 teams. So it'll be tough for Iowa State to get there, but considering the circumstances they've had to even get to this point, they've overcome a lot when you factor in the gambling probe that led a lot of the offseason discourse, and then you factor in some of their starts to the year where they were 1-2, and now they've kind of rebounded really well, and they are coming off of a huge win at BYU last weekend.
Yeah, and everyone looks at Oklahoma State as, or maybe they did before the Central Florida game, as the team that was surging, and Oklahoma State has tiebreakers over everyone except Iowa State. Texas just needs to, Sark came in with all gas, no brakes. And the last, 3 of the last 4 games, it's been all gas and then all brakes, with Texas giving up 20-point leads to Houston, to Kansas State, and then last week against TCU. And now without running back Jonathan Brooks, who would be the offensive MVP. So Texas has got to just become laser focused here. I mean, they can see the finish line, and everybody should be on red alert with Jonathan Brooks' injury and with Jared Hufford, the offensive lineman, who said that Texas doesn't know what they're in for on Saturday night. So that's spiced up this title fight.
Well, Chip, you mentioned it. Texas has struggled to close out big leads recently against TCU and K-State, giving up several chunk plays late in those games that made those victories a lot tighter than they should have been. So how does Texas fix that?
Yeah, they've got to play tighter coverage. They've got to be more aggressive. They got to play in the second half of football games like it's still 0-0 in the first quarter. They've tried to play more zone. They've tried to keep things in front of them. That's just not the personality of this defense. And when they go into that mode, players are on their heels. And last week, Sarkisian could have helped them by running the football more in the third quarter. TCU ended up holding the ball for 11 minutes. And so the defense was exhausted in the fourth quarter. They're missing tackles. They're playing sloppy defense. But I'm not sure Texas is going to have a 20-point lead to mess around with in this one. This one's probably going to be more toe-to-toe for 4 quarters, and Texas has done well in those games earlier in the year against Alabama and Wyoming. So we'll see if Texas can stay focused for 4 quarters.
Yeah, you talk about the need for Texas to be focused given the last couple of weeks and the struggles that they've had to maintain leads. I think Iowa State, one of the things that allows them to do a good job of holding leads when they have them is their defense has been really, really good this season. It's one of the best in the Big 12 when you look at it from a statistical standpoint across many of the different categories in the conference. But I don't know if they've seen a test like this since they went on the road and they lost 50-20 to Oklahoma. When you look at the explosive weapons that Texas has on the outside with A.D. Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, and that doesn't even include tight end Jatavian Sanders. So I think that Iowa State's defense has a lot of challenges on the outside this weekend against a really good Texas offense. And then offensively for Iowa State, they're going to struggle to run the ball. They've struggled to run the ball for most of the season in the Big 12. But what they have kind of started to progress with a little bit, especially on the outside with guys like Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel at receiver, is being able to stretch the field a little bit vertically and be able to make plays in space. They're going to have to do those 2 things this weekend if they want to be able to put some stress on the Texas defense. And the one area of weakness of the Texas defense is probably the secondary. They've dealt with some injuries back on the back half of the defense. And when you look at the defensive front of Tavondre Sweat, Byron Murphy, Jalen Ford at linebacker, it's going to be really hard for Iowa State to to really run the ball. And I think their pass protection is going to be tested a little bit, but they've been really good in that area this season, allowing just 9 sacks.
Huge blow to the Texas offense. They lost star running back Jonathan Brooks for the rest of the season with a torn ACL. He was the 6th leading rusher in the nation, averaging over 6 yards a carry. So, Chip, how does Texas fill this massive hole in their offense now?
Yeah, it is a massive hole in their offense because he's not just, a 1,000-yard rusher. He's one of their best pass catchers, had a 73-yard catch and run on a screen pass last week before tearing his ACL in the 4th quarter against TCU. So, look, CJ Baxter, you're ready for your close-up. The #1 running back in the recruiting class coming in as a freshman, and he was the starter at the beginning of the year until week 3. He's going to have to pick it up, and so is Jaden Blue, who has been waiting his turn patiently. He'll probably get more carries. Neither of those two break tackles like Jonathan Brooks. This is a sizable loss to the Texas offense.
Yeah, preparing for it, I think, is going to be tough for Iowa State's defense, too, because you don't know exactly what you're going to get from the duo of Baxter and Blue in the backfield for Texas. I do think that when you look at the talent of CJ Baxter, he's someone who can obviously make a big impact for the Texas run game. And before the injury, Quinn Ewers was important in the run game, too, for Texas in terms of escaping the pocket, being able to get vertical, and make some defenders miss. I didn't know he had that in his game before the season, but I've been impressed with his running ability. Iowa State's linebackers really struggled 2 weeks ago in their most recent home game against Kansas when they lost 28-21. Now, these offenses are very different. Kansas's offense uses a lot of pre-snap motion with their running backs and even their quarterbacks and their receivers, obviously. So the linebackers for Iowa State are going to be tested a lot. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see their secondary make plays as well in hopes of stopping the run game, because if you can kind of force Texas to beat you with throwing the ball, I think that's something that maybe Iowa State would like to do. But you're, like I said earlier, you're putting a lot of faith in your secondary to make plays against really talented Texas receivers.
Well, we've hit on a lot of good matchups here, but Alec, what would your one key to getting a win be?
Yeah, for me, it's definitely the way that the Iowa State secondary plays. If they're able to prevent allowing a lot of big plays over the top of the field to Worthy or Mitchell, I think that could go a long way for Iowa State. If I had to go another way, it would just be finding ways to sustain drives without being able to run the ball, which is counterintuitive to talk about. But if they're able to kind of move the ball down the field with short intermediate passes and sustain drives, I think that would go a long way, because if this turns into a shootout, I think Iowa State's really going to struggle because they just don't have the playmakers or the athletes to continue to make the plays that the Longhorns do.
Yeah, and for Texas, it's Quinn Ewers. I mean, he struggled against this Iowa State defense a year ago, and the first time you see it, it looks like a Sudoku puzzle. But he's had more experience now with the 3-high safety look, and he's going to have to be really smart with the football, and Texas is going to have to protect him. They did not give up a sack last week against TCU, but Quinn Ewers threw the ball away a lot. He is not 100%. He's not going to be over that AC joint sprain in his throwing shoulder until he's done playing football this season. So, Quinn Ewers showed he could make some big-time throws last week, coming off the goal line to A.D. Mitchell. The 3rd and 12, 35-yard pass at the end of the game to basically seal the victory to A.D. Mitchell. Quinn Ewers is going to have to be basically what he was at Alabama. Just be precise, sharp, clean, and get it to these explosive playmakers. And not having Jonathan Brooks again is a significant factor in this game.
All right, Quinn Ewers in the Iowa State secondary. That's apparently a Sudoku puzzle. Love how those keys of the game go hand in hand. Alec and Chip, thanks so much for your insight. And for more on the game, check out Cyclone Alert and Horns247 for all your Iowa State and Texas football and recruiting news all season long.